the 0 through 4 scale and using it in your gradebook. There are two main ways to use the 0 through 4 system this year. The first of which is crosswalking the 100-point scale into the 0 through 4 scale, and the second of which is using criterion or rubrics with scales of 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4 for students based on their performance. Let's talk a little bit about crosswalking first because it's the easiest and quickest to implement. The basic premise of this system is that you are taking scores from a 100-point scale and converting them into 0, 1, 2, 3, or 4. In column D, we have our old scale of 0 to 59 being an F, and then 10-point increments for D, C, B, and A. The biggest disadvantage to this system that the Equitable Grading Think Tank came up with when they were examining the research was that it is 2/3 weighted towards failure and can make recovery for students almost impossible. In column F, we have our new scale, which is 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. The nice thing about this system is that it aligns very well with the letters that we use to report grades. There are 5 letters and 5 numbers, one for each. In column G, we have the scale that those scores would be converted to when it comes to averaging all the scores together. You have 4 divided by 5, one for each grade, which would come out to 0.8 for each level. So each of these levels is essentially 0.8 and equally distanced from one another. This is the big advantage to this system because we don't have 2/3 of the scale weighted towards one letter. So let's just go through how we would use this. Let's say, for instance, you have a student with 5 scores. Let's say on the first assessment or test they got an 87. On the second one they got a 65. Let's say they got a 71, a 79, and a 75. What you would do is when you report these scores out to students, you would convert them using our crosswalk system. An 87 is a B. A B equates to a 3. So we would report a 3 out to a student on their report card and on the paper that we handed back. A 65 is a D, which equates to a 1. A 71 is a C, which would equate to a 2. A 79 is also a C, which would equate to a 2 and is a 75. At the end of the day, we have a 3, 1, 2, 2, and 2. These are averaged into an overall score of 2.0. If we use our scale in column G, what a student will see in Canvas and on their report card, a 2 is a C. We have the ability to change our scale in Canvas to match these increments, and we'll talk a little bit about doing that in our afternoon Canvas training sessions. But at the end of the day, the biggest thing here is just understanding that you're taking old scores and converting them into a new scale. So if you didn't do anything different this year and used all your same assessments, quizzes, tests, papers, but wanted to use a more equitable scale, you could continue to hand those out to students. You wouldn't have to change the essence of your assignments. You would just change how the reporting looks by taking their scores on the 100-point scale and converting them into a 0, 1, 2, 3, or 4. Another advantage for using the 0 through 4 scale is that you can use zeros in confidence knowing that it is equally distanced from the next level up and students can recover from early mistakes. So when you give a 0 on this scale for a student not completing an assignment, the student will see the 0, the parent will see the 0 will be calculated into their grade, and at the same time it is a 0 on an equal interval scale, so you can confidently give it knowing that it is more equitable than 2/3 weighted towards failure. Another advantage for using the 0 through 4 crosswalk system is that it sets you up to use criterion or rubrics. The criterion or rubric scale is also 0, 1, 2, 3, or 4. So if you wanted to just dabble with one assignment or one project in a semester to kind of try a new system, you could do that while continuing to crosswalk every other assignment. What you wouldn't be able to do very easily would be to use the 0 through 100-point scale for all your assignments and then 0 through 4 on 1 or 2. That won't work because of the system that we have to set up in Canvas for how we report grades. So if you choose to crosswalk, you would need to crosswalk all of your assignments and use a 0 through 4 scale on everything that goes into the grade book. But like I said, if you do this, it sets you up well to start dabbling in criteria or rubric-based scoring. Let's talk a little bit about how that looks and how you would grade an assignment or a student on that system. What we have here in our criterion tab is the same scale of 0, 1, 2, 3, or 4. Now, instead of this coming from a conversion of the 100-point scale, each one of these numbers represents a student's ability towards a particular assignment or skill. So we have a 0 is incomplete missing, a 1 is beginning, a 2 is developing, a 3 is proficient, and a 4 is advanced. We still have those same grades, those A, B, C, D, Fs that align with each one of these. And we still have the exact same scale that we used on the crosswalk tab. So that's why if you choose to crosswalk, you can also dabble in criterion and not have to go 100% all in on every single assignment. The biggest thing around criterion or rubric-based scoring is that you are comparing students against criteria and not comparing them with a amount of correct answers out of total possible. It is comparing them against a standard, a bar, a skill that you need them to be able to do versus just how many did they get right. And so for what I've done here is we have some different NGSS, Next Generation Science Standards, skills that we want students to be able to do. And so here is an example of rubrics for each of these particular skills where there's a beginning criteria, a developing criteria, a proficient criteria, and an advanced criteria. So let's just say I have 4 strands, say there are 4 assignments, and each assignment tackles a different area of NGSS. Let's start with representing data. This is maybe where you give students a bunch of raw data and you want them to turn it into a graph for easy representation. The student's going to do that. You're going to take a look at the student's work and you're going to compare their work towards these different levels. Once you've determined where they land on this rubric, that's the score they get. So let's just say for that particular assignment, which would be a beginning assignment in many of our middle school or high school science courses where they're looking at data and have to convert it into a graph or a table. Let's just say for that first one, they did a pretty decent job, but they missed some details. It wasn't 100% clear. They left something out. In this case, it would be they didn't allow for identifying patterns among variables. So you're going to give that student a 2 on that assignment. Say you have another assignment where you ask a student to construct a model of maybe a natural phenomena. Here's your same criterias: beginning, developing, proficient, advanced. There's a verbiage for each that students would see in advance. And say for this one, the student did exactly what they were asked to do and were at grade level for that particular assignment. Let's give them a 3. Let's just say then planning and investigation, you gave students a problem and they had to design a lab to test that problem. We again have different criteria. Let's say for this one, the student absolutely nailed it, got everything, went above and beyond, and showed that they have advanced abilities when it comes to designing a lab. Give them a 4. Last one, analyzing data. You gave students a bunch of data, asked them to analyze what does that data mean. Student didn't do it, maybe they forgot to turn it in. Here's where you can give that 0 in confidence. We now have scores and an overall average based on those 4 scores of a 2.25. In this particular instance, the 2.25 would land right here and the student would have a C. So when you are using criterion scoring, you are comparing students against the levels on a rubric and not using percentages. And that's the biggest difference between crosswalking and criterion. With crosswalking, you're still using percentages but giving it a new label. With criterion, you're comparing their work against a standard. A standard, not like a standard like ODE standard necessarily, but a standard of work for what's proficient for that particular assignment. And so if you choose to move forward with 0 through 4, you can use just crosswalking, just criterion, or a combination of both.